For 12 minutes, but unknown to the pilot, an S-400 near Miltopo had just locked him up at 120 km. The steady tone in the pilot's headset hit like a punch to the gut. The missile was already climbing, 180 km of explosive bad news accelerating past. Mach 2 in its first second of flight. At this range, impact in 80 seconds, maybe 90 if he gets lucky. The pilot yanked the stick hard right while deploying chaff, putting the MiG into a 90-degree aspect angle to the radar beam. What pilots called notching, he held the perpendicular heading while dispensing chaff bursts. The aluminum strips created a cloud-reflecting radar, energy like thousands of mirrors, making one aircraft look like 100. Track quality degraded until the lock was lost. Without guidance updates, the missile switched to backup mode, flying toward the last intercept point, but the pilot had already changed course and dived. The missile seeker activated but found nothing but chaff, detonating harmlessly. The S-400 radar uses Doppler processing to separate moving targets from ground clutter. But when an aircraft flies perpendicular, its relative velocity becomes 0. To Doppler, it looks like terrain, which is why the missile missed. The pilot leveled at 500 FT, but he knew it wasn't over. The Russian gravestone radar uses thousands of TRMs, capable of instant electronic beam steering. It remembers the target's last position, heading, speed, and predicts where it might be. The pilot had bought maybe 30 seconds. They switched to bistatic. Mode, transmitter, and receiver separated by 40 km. The MiG's warning. Receiver only saw the transmitter. Unaware, another receiver was collecting reflections from a different angle. Even at 500 FT, the geometry allowed a return signal. Weak but enough. They had him again. They didn't launch immediately. They had something better planned. A Buk M3 battery received the data. They waited for the aircraft to reach the perfect spot, a rise overlooking the valley. They didn't search. The S-400 had given them everything: altitude, speed, heading, arrival time. The Buk radar activated instantly, pointed to the exact bearing where the MiG would appear. This was not a search. This was an execution. The pilot's threat receiver lit up. He'd been ambushed, trapped in a valley. Couldn't dive, couldn't climb, couldn't turn. The Buk had boxed him in. 2 9M3 710mm missiles launched, 690 kilos each, pulling 35 G in the terminal phase. The MiG had no chance outrunning them. He climbed aggressively, pulling 7.5 G, losing vision at the edges as his suit squeezed blood back to his brain. Gaining altitude fast, he fired all chaff and rolled inverted. The first missile overshot. The second predicted his maneuver. But he countered mid-roll using negative Gs, forcing another overshoot. Both missiles detonated harmlessly. But he paid for it: huge fuel burn, low speed. The Buk crew was reloading. They could fire again before he reached weapon release altitude. They launched again, but both missiles simultaneously, an error. Instead of 2 staggered threats, it became one defensive window. He released his GBU-39s after GPS lock, rolled inverted, and dove. At Mach 4, missiles needed almost 2 km to turn. The MiG could reverse in 200 mem, both overshot. Leveling at 8,000 FT, he checked fuel, dangerously low. Enough to reach Ukrainian airspace, maybe. Then a new threat, search radar from an Su-35S, 85 km away and closing fast. The Su-35 saw the wounded MiG crawling at 280 knots. In minutes, it would be in missile range. At 55 kilometers, the Russian launched an R-77. The Ukrainian pilot waited, then pulled the MiG into a near-vertical climb, bleeding to 180 knots. At the top, he kicked full rudder, stalling the aircraft deliberately. The missile AI failed to solve the intercept, overshooting. The MiG fell like a brick, recovering at 5,000 FT, diving away. But the Su-35 now had him cornered. It switched to an R-73 infrared missile. No radar warning. The Russian dove from above for the kill. The MiG pilot fired all flares in a climbing spiral. The R-73 chose the brightest heat source, the flares, and missed. The Su-35 overshot again, fuel becoming critical. The MiG ran for the deck, racing toward Ukrainian airspace, 75 km away. But a ZSU Shilka waited ahead, guided by the same network. 4 23mm cannons opened fire. The pilot rolled inverted at 50 FT, flying negative G, rounds passing overhead. Some hit, holes in stabilizer and wing, hydraulics dropping, yet he made it through. Smoking, leaking fluid, nearly out of fuel, he pushed forward. Behind him, the GBU-39s continued. The first struck the battalion command post, destroying it instantly. The second hit the ammunition bunker, 500 tons of ordnance. The chain reaction turned the site into a volcanic eruption. The pilot crossed into Ukrainian airspace with every warning light glowing. Engine overheating and barely any fuel left. He had survived the S-400, the Buk, the Su-35, the Shilka, and an entire integrated air defense system designed to kill him.